The President's Daily Brief, the PDB, the intelligence document prepared for the President each morning, is not a data dump. It is a curation. It contains what the intelligence community has decided the President needs to know today, in the form and at the level of detail that the intelligence community has decided is appropriate for presidential consumption. The programs, operations, and intelligence holdings that do not surface in the PDB are not necessarily unknown to the presidency. They may be briefed through other channels, but they are not in the daily brief. Welcome to Chasing Power. I'm Charles Denyer. Today we begin a 10-part series on one of the most persistent and most consequential myths in American political life. Not a myth about a specific event or a specific person, a myth about the nature of presidential power itself, specifically about what a president knows, what a president can access, and what a president can demand and receive from the most powerful and most secretive institutions on earth.
Welcome to Chasing Power, the path to Pennsylvania Avenue, a Charles Denyer Productions podcast.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
The audacity of hope. America, you've vindicated that hope.
And we will make America great again.
Right now, a historic moment. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Donald Trump wins the...
So the myth is this, that when someone wins the presidency of the United States, the full truth of the world becomes available to them, that the secrets are finally revealed, that the files are opened, that the questions every thinking American has wondered about what really happened in Dallas in 1963.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
About what the government actually knows about unidentified aerial phenomena, about the covert operations conducted in America's name in countries most people can't find on a map, are finally answered for the one person constitutionally empowered to know everything. Every president since Richard Nixon has encountered in their own way and on their own timeline a version of the same discovery. The discovery is not dramatic. It does not come in a single moment. It comes gradually, through specific interactions with specific institutions, through specific questions that receive specific non-answers, through specific requests that encounter specific walls. And the discovery, when it fully arrives, is this. You are the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the system, but you are still inside the system. And the system was not built for you, it was built to outlast you. Over 10 episodes, we are going to trace that discovery president by president, from Nixon through Trump, using their own words, the words of their closest advisors, the documented records of their specific encounters with the limits of presidential knowledge. We are going to show you what Bill Clinton found when he asked about UFOs and the Kennedy assassination. We are going to show you what George W. Bush found when he was fully briefed and still wrong. We are going to show you what Barack Obama found when he asked certain questions and was told gently that he could not. We start today with the architecture, the system itself, what it is, and how it was built. Because you cannot understand the presidential experience of hitting the wall until you understand what the wall is made of. The transition period between election and inauguration is, for every president-elect, one of the most disorienting experiences in American political life. They have just won the most competitive and consequential contest in the world's most powerful democracy. They have spent 2 years being told implicitly and explicitly that winning the presidency means finally being in charge, finally having the authority, the access, and the knowledge that power requires. They arrive at the first classified briefing with a specific set of expectations, almost all of which the briefing will begin quietly and without fanfare to complicate. The expectation is all-knowing. Not literally. No serious person believes they will know everything. But there is a strong intuition shared by virtually every incoming president that the classified world will finally become legible, that the things they suspected, the programs they heard about, the incidents they read about in books and saw discussed in documentaries will be confirmed or denied with the authority of official knowledge, that someone finally will tell them the complete truth. However, what they find instead is a system with its own logic, its own pace, its own hierarchy of disclosure, and its own very carefully maintained limits on what it shares with the person constitutionally empowered to direct it. The President's Daily Brief, the PDB, the intelligence document prepared for the President each morning, is not a data dump. It is a curation. It contains what the intelligence community has decided the President needs to know today, in the form and at the level of detail that the intelligence community has decided is appropriate for presidential consumption. The programs, operations, and intelligence holdings that do not surface in the PDB are not necessarily unknown to the presidency. They may be briefed through other channels, but they are not in the daily brief. And a president who does not know to ask about them, who does not know they exist, will not receive them. The classification system that governs what the president does and does not know is not a single barrier. It is a series of nested compartments, each requiring its own access authorization, each maintained by its own institutional custodians, each with its own logic for determining who is cleared and who is not. The public understands classification as three levels: confidential, secret, and top secret. Top secret is not the top. It is rather the entry point to a system of special access programs, SAPs, that extends far beyond anything the public three-tier framework suggests. A special access program requires not just a clearance level, but a specific named authorization, a read-in, that must be granted by the program's access control authority. Having a top secret clearance does not give any individual access to any SAP. It gives them the theoretical eligibility to be considered for access to specific SAPs, subject to approval that the president does not unilaterally control. The number of SAPs in existence at any given moment is itself classified. In fact, the system has grown so large that no one can accurately count how many programs really exist. Not the Director of National Intelligence, not the Secretary of Defense, and not even the President of the United States. This is the wall. It's not a conspiracy, not at all. And it's not a deliberate plot to deceive the President of the United States. It is a system so large, so partitioned, and so institutionally entrenched that the president, any president, receives a carefully selected fraction of what exists, presented in a format designed for executive decision-making rather than comprehensive disclosure. Every president who has been honest about this experience has described it in similar terms. The fraction they receive is enormous. The fraction they do not receive is even larger. Every president since Richard Nixon has had a version of the same moment, the moment when the expectation of knowing all collides with the reality of institutional limits. For some presidents, it comes early and dramatically, such as Nixon, who hit the wall within weeks and responded with deliberate aggression. For others, it comes gradually, such as Barack Obama, who arrived with the most sophisticated understanding of the classified world of any president in decades and still found, to his own quiet admission, that certain questions produced certain non-answers. For some, it comes through a specific incident, such as Ronald Reagan, who learned that an operation had been running inside his own administration that he did not fully grasp. For others, it comes through a specific question, such as Bill Clinton, who asked about UFOs and the JFK files and found that the answers the most powerful man in the world received were, in their own way, not answers at all. So the through line that connects every presidential experience we are going to document is not paranoia and is not conspiracy. It is the structural reality of governing a system that was built over decades by people who are no longer in office to serve interests that are not always identical to the interests of the elected officials who nominally directs it. You are the President of the United States of America, the most powerful person in the system. but you are still inside that very system. And it was there before you arrived, and it will be there long after you leave. That's where we end on part 1. We've established the myth and the reality, the expectation of knowing all and the architecture of structured access that every president encounters instead. We've introduced the Special Access Program system, whose full dimensions are unknown to any single person alive. And we've introduced the through line that is going to run through every episode of this series, the specific moment unique to each president when the reality of the system becomes undeniable. In part 2, we go deep into the classification architecture, the specific machinery of what presidents are not told and why, the legal framework of need to know that applies even to the commander-in-chief, and the documented cases where presidents discovered programs they had not known existed. This is the episode that destroys the myth completely. That's part 1 of what presidents don't know on Chasing Power. Stay with us.
All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not reflect the official positions of any political organization, government agency, or private institution. This podcast is for news reporting, commentary, and criticism. We use excerpts, clips, and quotations from political events and other copyrighted works under the Fair Use Doctrine. All rights in those works remain with their respective owners. The views expressed are our own and do not represent any other entity.